All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Plagmer. I'm the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and I'm joined here with Max McKenna. He's the director running our small business cybersecurity program that we call Cybersecure My Business. And our speaker today is Robert Chaffee. He's the founder of Progressive Computing, co-founder, I should say. He's going to talk to us a little bit about an incident that affected him and his business, and to be honest, his customers, his employees, their families. It's a far-reaching security incident. But the reason we're hosting this webinar today with Robert and his story is because we see small business after small business being affected by cybersecurity incidents that they're really not prepared for. And we have a small business program to try and change that. So our Cybersecure My Business program is instructor-led, remote course that will be starting soon. Our first course is going to run in a couple of weeks. And it's there to teach the business owner how to manage security as a function of the business. So how to understand risk, how to have an intelligent conversation with your IT provider, your your MSP or MSSP, what questions to ask during the third-party risk process. So we're not trying to get overly technical. The class is there to explain in business terms what it means to protect your business, and you'll walk out of that class with a plan, and there'll be some homework along the way so that we can gather some data on the actions that you're taking, so we can make sure that the businesses finish that course more secure than when they started it. We're also building a waiting list of businesses that are interested in attending. Like I said, we're going to hold our first one shortly. That's going to be for car dealers in the auto industry. A class like this is really appropriate for any business that has a franchise model, or if you're a big company and you're on this webinar today and you've got smaller businesses in your supply chain, whether that's upstream or downstream, like franchises or suppliers, because when they have incidents, it affects you as well. And so we want to get this training to those businesses so that we don't see any more of those ripple effects across industries where large organizations are affected by incidents happening to small businesses. So we are looking for more partners to help us customize it for different industries. We've customized the first one for car dealers, as I said, but then we want to go to other industries as well. So if you're a large organization in an industry where you feel like this would be beneficial and you want to partner with us, then just reach out to us. And I think Max put some information in the chat, in a link. So I'm gonna stop my PSA and I'm gonna let Robert get started. We will be taking Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions in as the presentation unfolds. Robert, I'm gonna let you share your screen and take it from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lisa. And really thank you to everybody for giving your time, or I should say, hopefully investing your time with me and with us today. I want to just make sure that I'm sharing my screen out properly here. Can you see my screen?
You're good to go.
All right, awesome. I'm just going to maneuver a couple of windows around. So again, just thank you for the time that you're putting into spending some time with us today. I want to talk briefly a little bit about who I am so you have some context. My name is Robert Chaffee. I am the CTO and co-founder of what is called an MSP, or an IT service provider, out of Yonkers, New York. If you know where that is, we're just north of New York City, lost in their shadow. This is a business that I co-founded in 1993 to provide IT services to small and mid-sized businesses throughout the New York City metro area. Actually, our reach is national now. But this is not a technical story. It's really a business story. It's a human story. It's the psychological and emotional impact that a cyber event can have on really any business. It just happened to happen to a technology company. Many people liken this story to be a nightmare or a nightmare scenario, especially for an IT company. But really, again, it's the nightmare scenario almost for any business because when your operations are held hostage and you can't transact, I mean, that's a really terrible day. So I hope to oddly enough, maybe entertain you a little bit, educate you a little bit. I may get a little emotional, so I'm sorry if you hear me pause or I have to kind of just take a breath because this is something that has affected me very deeply and very personally. I don't have an actual diagnosis of PTSD, but it sure in hell feels like I do because of the effects of that really terrible day. And I have under an hour here. I'm just going to try to keep it short. Try to get to the 15 minutes before the top of the hour to leave room for questions and Q&A. But I can literally, speak forever about this. I can, I've been cornered in a bar at times, and 3, 4 hours later, I'm still rambling on about the events and the details. So let me just jump right to it, and just want to make sure that you're seeing my screen properly here. Can I get a just a thumbs up from Lisa or Max just to make sure we're still displaying properly?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome, thanks. So on July 2nd of 2021, it was, we were all preparing here for Independence Day celebration, observance on Monday, July 5th, that entire weekend. If you're from the Northeast or from the upper Midwest, probably a big bulk of the country, you know what winters are like, right? They're miserable. They're tough. 3 inches of ice on the ground, a lot of cold. Why am I talking about the weather, right? And what does this have to do with the story? Well, because it was a glorious, absolute, 10 best days of the year is what local weathermen say about the weather. It was in the mid 80s. It was cool. It was dry, no humidity. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. The forecast for the next 4 or 5 days was identical. As you might imagine, we had, tons of barbecues set up for the whole weekend. We had a boat ride on the Hudson River with our friends that we were going on. The mood was very light. In the IT support business, we get a lot of tickets, inbound calls every day. That Friday felt very light. Why? Because many of our clients had the same thing in mind about taking the weekend, to relax and enjoy just the beautiful weather. Um, and and it was a very kind of light day. But at 10:49 a.m., something sinister was happening to my company, and unbeknownst to all of us, as we kind of sat here in that half cheery mood of thinking about going home early and enjoying the 3-day weekend. So I did something incredibly unusual for a business owner, especially somebody in the technology business, at around noon. I know it sounds really strange, but I decided to eat lunch. I know, crazy, right? So it was noon. I got, usually most days at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in the kitchen shoveling something in my mouth, and people are like, "Oh, late lunch," and I'm like, "No, this is breakfast." But the point is that that was just kind of set them, the stage for what the day was like. Um, so I was in my kitchen eating and finished my lunch, and my kitchen is sort of a galley, whereas long table, and out on the other end of that long table that I was sitting on one end, on the other end of it is the doorway to come into the kitchen, and outside that doorway is a very long hallway that traverses the second floor of the office building that we're in. And I could see my operations director ascend the top of the staircase, which was at the very end of that hallway, and start walking the hall toward me. And immediately I just sensed that there was something really, really wrong in his walk and his demeanor. He was harried. His gait was wrong. He's Filipino, so he looked very pale to me. And I literally got up, excuse my French, although this is not a French word, but I said, "Holy shit, I think somebody died," because that's what I saw on his face, that something really horrible had happened. So I got up and I went to the threshold of the kitchen, that doorway where I met Jay, my ops director, and he and I have a really strong, positive, professional, and even a personal relationship. But I knew something was awfully wrong simply because he would not look me in the eye. And I knew I had to get to to the heart of the matter. So, my brain raced through all of the worst case scenarios. Did somebody from my family just call? Did one of our engineers have an accident? Did something happen to my business partner? All sorts of terrible thoughts went through my head. And although death is probably far worse than what we experienced that day, I mean, that's how I felt, is that something bad was about to happen. So I kind of put my hands on Jay's shoulders and, tried to comfort him into feeling like he could, tell me this, unburden this bad news that he had. And he just looked at me and said, all of our customers are ransomware. Now, being in a technology business, which I understand there's a lot of people probably not in the tech business, but if you own a business or you operate in a business, you're already familiar with either an outsourced provider or an IT department and the things that they do for you. Now, look at it from our perspective as an outsourced provider. I'm not managing the IT for one customer or one department. I'm doing it on that day for 80 different distinct businesses. And those 80 distinct businesses had 200 physical locations across 4 time zones in the United States. The total number of people we were supporting across all of those businesses was around 2,500 people that day. So it was an immense amount of responsibility that we had. And to hear words that came out of Jay's mouth, like all of our customers are ransomware, was not something that I could readily process. It was too surreal. It was too um, incomprehensible for me to get my head around. So I rejected Jay's reality and inserted my own, or at least that was my feeble attempt to bring some sense to what this ridiculous statement that all of our customers are ransomware. And I said, Jay, come on, that's like, what do you mean all of them? It can't be all of them. Which one? Right? Or maybe even which ones? Maybe there was something, that affected 2 or 3 in some weird way. And he said, no, Robert, it's all of them. And again, I pushed back and said, Jake, like, just doesn't make sense. And what he did, which there's a little bit of debate now that we have whether he did this intentionally or not, I think he did it subconsciously, is he began to list all of those customers one by one in revenue size order. So he started with the largest ones and started to rattle off, names in our top 10, top 15, top 20 customers. And one by one, each one of those was like a giant domino pancaking on top of me, pummeling me further and further into the ground. I didn't know what to do. That glorious day that was outside, all that sun and beautiful air. We had the windows open, an unusual day to, like great day, a few days of the year that you actually open the office windows. Suddenly the room became dark. I mean, I know it sounds really cliche and almost like a movie, but it really felt that way. It really felt like the air got thin, that I was having trouble breathing, that that dark clouds had enveloped us. And I can now hear and see people in my office through either glass walls or over cubicles. I can kind of hear and see a lot of commotion. I heard conversations like, I don't know what's going on. Hold on. I know you're upset. Let's see if, hold on. I think there's a system-wide issue going on. Let me see if I can get a technician for you. Let me get some more information and get back to you. A lot of nervous, stuttering conversations, a lot of uneasiness, people standing, right? They're no longer comfortable in their seats. They actually physically had to rise because the tension in the office had become incredibly palpable at that moment. So I did the only thing that I knew what to do is I went into kind of this investigator mode, right? I put my detective hat on and grabbed Jay by the shoulders and said, "Come with me. We're going to my office," which is exactly where you see me now, is where I was sitting that day. Same exact environment, same computer setup, looking at the screen that I'm looking at right now is what I was looking at that day. And this email was one of many emails that started to flood into my inbox. This was from one of our oldest and largest accounts that we had for more than a decade. Paid us very, very well, was very profitable, super happy, great relationship with them. And it was, without you reading, it was basically an indication that their voice over IP phone system, which is on the computer network, suddenly stopped working. And they're a heavy sales organization. So you can imagine the panic. And this was their VP of sales who had reached out to me. By November of that year, this customer had fired us and moved on to a competitor. So it was one of the very first pelts of hailstones to arrive. So I sat at my desk trying to discern what was going on, and had two of my chief engineers, one on my desk phone, one on my cell phone, and I had Jay standing literally right behind me, like right here, if you can imagine somebody standing here, looking, logging into systems, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to make heads and tails of things. We were in a state of panic, right? This was our entire livelihoods that were suddenly being whisked away from us. And I'll read you the quote. There are a number of different quotes that I have in here. I'll read it to you in Italian, since that's where my parents are from. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate, but you know it as abandon all hope ye who enter here. This is how I felt sitting at my desk, uncovering the truth about what was happening. I logged into systems that I instinctively knew that were commandeered to be used to push ransomware to all of our customers. And then as we were going through this investigative process, something happened physically here in this space that really drove it home for me. And that is, and this is about as technical as I'm going to get in this presentation. But as I was sitting there, looking at various screens and looking at my desktop, I could see all my icons on my desktop start to go from the familiar Word and Excel and PowerPoint icons that you all know to a white box. Now, for those of you who aren't technical, what this essentially means is that when Windows can't recognize a file anymore, it puts a white box in its place, right? When you see that familiar blue W or green X, or that orange, PowerPoint symbol, you know what that file type is. Well, when ransomware is installed on your computer and every single file, including the ones on your desktop, are encrypted, they'll all turn into a white box, except for one file. And if you've ever experienced this, you know what that file was. It was a TXT file or a notepad file, and it was the ransom note, which is what I will go over with you on an upcoming slide. So I know there's a lot of you probably like me run a business. I mean, I'm a businessman first, even though I'm really a techno geek. Um, uh, but we invest a lot of time into personal and professional development, leadership development. So you're probably familiar with different personality types, disc profiles. There's something called Make a Difference that has 4 animals. I happen to be a lion out of the 4 animals. I know, go figure. A business person is an A-type personality. But I have my own personality type, and I could write a book on it, but it'll only be 1 page long, and it'll only have one personality type, and it's my own. So it's just the way my crazy brain works. I call myself a fixer, right? Being a technologist, even being just a tinkerer my whole life. And I think even to just start a business, you have to kind of have that mindset of, I don't care what the problem is, I'm going to fix it, right? I'm going to address it. And if I can't do it, then I'm going to get somebody who can. But my head always goes to fixing problems. It's why I do every single trade in my house. and why I can even work on cars, even though I'm probably shouldn't be. But I just look at the world as a series of problems to be fixed. I guess it's all the math and physics and computer science, and also having a dad who was a carpenter, and making wine and tomato sauce and all those other skills that I learned as a kid. You just did stuff, right? Because that's the way we were just trained and designed. But I sat there once I knew that all of our customers were ransomware, and now I can see that the ransomware had infected our own systems. I watched my business. I watched my entire life flash before my eyes. And again, it's very cliche to say that. It sounds very Hollywood-esque, but I'm telling you that in that moment, that is how I felt. I thought about my daughter who was in her second year of college, about recalling her home and being able and telling her we would not be able to continue to fund her education. I thought about all the life plans that I work on so diligently with my wife, about big family trips every year that we try to take to enrich our children's lives and even have our own great experiences. The investments that we had made and planned, all of that just evaporate in a moment. I watched the value of my multi-million-dollar business go to zero, and not just zero, but go negative once I considered all of the potential lawsuits that were coming our way. It was a horrifying moment to watch. At that time, we're now 31 years in business, but at the time, 28 years of business go up in proverbial flames, right? To be at the gates of hell here and have no choice, none whatsoever. It was all gone and taken away from us in an instant. How was I going to be able to recover all of these systems in such short order? How was I going to be able to survive all of the lawsuits? How was I going to be able to recover the trust and confidence that all of those companies have put in us? Now, again, we're a technology company, but as you know, my partner and I have built this company based on the premise of we're not, we just happen to provide technical services. We're in the service business, and it's all about relationships. And I felt in that moment, right, sitting here evaluating our fate and thinking it's all gone, it's done. 28 years of blood, sweat, toil, and tears have just vanished. So here I was, literally where you see me right now, contemplating my own mortality, staring into the abyss. The fixer was broken, and the fixer had no idea what to do next. I mean, I didn't even have a single thought about what we could do. I was just completely frozen. There's really only one thing to do when you're in a moment like this. And I searched really hard in my heart and in my head for what to do next. And being a little bit of a history buff and looking for inspiration, I found it in Winston Churchill, who famously quipped, and there's a lot of great quotes from him about the English's, the experience of the English during World War II. And he said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Um, so there I was standing at the gates of hell, and Jay, who's now behind me, right? And I've got my head sunk in my hands, literally, like, holding my head up, not knowing what to do. And Jay said something awfully cliche to me, but so important at the same time. He saw me faltering. He saw the leader of this company just kind of losing it, not knowing what to do. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Come on, Robert, we've got this." Now, when I think back, I mean, what a bunch of horse crap, right? We got this. What do we got? We got a giant mess on our hands is what we have here. We have an insurmountable problem. We have an unrecoverable situation. What do you mean we got this? But, what was the man supposed to say to me, right? He saw me emotionally breaking down, and knew that we had to do something, but it was the right kick. It may have not been the perfect words to say, but they were perfect in a lot of ways to just kind of get me going and to think along the lines of Churchill. So for all of you who have a somewhat of a technical bone in their body, you know that Control Z means undo on a computer, right? If you're in Word and delete a sentence, if you hit Control Z, the sentence will come back. So where's the Control Z? How do we undo this mess? So one of the first things I did, what I came to realize was the team needed to come together here. My entire company needed to come together and group. I couldn't just hide in my office, even though a lot, admittedly, a part of me wanted to just slink away and just hide forever. But I knew that that wasn't the answer. We needed to do something. So what I did is I kind of went into general Patton mode and started barking orders around the office. I told Jay, get your butt downstairs, go get everybody on the help desk team, everybody upstairs into the conference room. I barked around the office a couple of times. I probably barked a little too much, right? Because I went from that frantic, unknowing, emotional state to I've got to just take charge. And the lion needs to kind of lead now. So, we gathered everybody in the conference room, and by the time we had technicians calling in from the field, as well as everybody physically coming into the room, I struggled to find what the right words were to say. And it was really honestly our core values and our culture. I think it was Peter Drucker who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast or something along those lines. That culture ultimately was going to be a key factor in our survival. For those of you who may have implemented EOS or a similar system in their business, may know these terms. They may resonate with you a little bit more so than others. But even if you haven't, right, focusing your company on its culture will help you survive during times of adversity, through a disaster, right? And so I just instinctually leaned on our values and recited them and told everybody, hey, listen, we've got this major problem, but let's not forget our values: commitment, determined to do what it takes, team, together we get it done, humble confidence, service without ego, and respect always. These were going to be some tense situations we were going to be facing, and we needed to rely on all four of those, especially that respect. We have to respect that people are going to be upset, and we have to respect that people are going to be hurling some bad language at us, but we're going to need to get through this, and we're going to get through it together, right? And because we're a team. So I'm going to go quick here. If anybody knows this, it is the symbol of chaos. It comes from a mythological character called Elric. I get a lot of my problem solving and personality quirks from playing many, many years of Dungeons and Dragons and reading Tolkien and other sci-fi and fantasy. So if any of that resonates with you, thank goodness. If it doesn't, I'm not a total geek. Please give me some grace here. But I actually have that logo on a shirt. It's the symbol of chaos. And here I was on the top of Camelback Mountain in Phoenix, if you know it. And a friend of mine, we were kind of goofing around because it was such an arduous hike up there. And, I pretended to fall down, and he, pretended to pick me up. But that's the way the rest of the afternoon went. It was totally chaotic. We were frantic. We didn't have an incident response plan. We had never practiced or role played. There's that word from D&D. We never role played out scenarios to figure out what to do. I didn't know who to call, where to go, who to try to get help from. Now, if you want to really laugh or just, wonder at how crazy this world can be sometimes, we had signed up with a new cyber liability insurance policy because our old one it was junk, and I'm being kind there. But our new policy had gone into effect on Monday, June 28th, 4 days before the attack. And I had forgotten all about it, right? And it took my finance director, Marina, to kind of tap me on my shoulder during my frantic, general Patton mode, to say, "Hey, Robert, maybe we should like call cyber insurance." And I was like, "Yeah, idiot, dummy, Robert, of course we should." But this was kind of a foreshadowing of not only the chaos that ensued over the next couple of weeks, But Rich, my buddy Rich there, picking me up off the floor, was a little bit of a foreshadow of what was to come. Now that weekend was terribly torturous. If you're ever in the midst of a cyber event, I know a lot of people's instincts are like fix it, recover, like, start working on systems. And unfortunately, the best thing that you can do is sit on your hands. And I know that sounds crazy, but you have to really understand what the impact of that cyber event is and the forensics of that event, because you cannot properly recover, both legally and even technically properly, without understanding the forensics of the attack itself, right? If the cyber criminals were in our systems for the last couple of months and had exfiltrated or stolen data out, like uploaded data out of systems, then that recovery looks a lot different than what we experienced, which is more of a smash and grab style, where it was a lightning strike. It was a massive installation of ransomware through the tools that we use to support our customers, and there was literally no time for them to exfiltrate or copy data out, and that's what ultimately the forensic report had shown us. We had two independent companies on one on July 3rd and on July 4th. We finally had enough information to create what's called an RPO, or a recovery plan objective. We knew that at that time, it took us until Sunday afternoon. And again, we're sitting on our hands, getting a lot of angry phone calls from people who are demanding action to say, look, legally, we can't do anything until we understand how to recover. But we knew that at 10:49 a.m., an attacker had leveraged what's called a zero-day exploit, right? A security bug that nobody knows about, to break into some of the systems that we use to manage our customers and push out ransomware. So this is a friend of mine, Kevin, who's part of a peer group. And whatever business you're in, I would highly encourage you to get yourself integrated into peer groups, because they really help save our butt that day and those upcoming weeks. But here was Kevin writing an email to our peer association, basically saying, and you don't need to read it, and there's maybe even some foul language in there, but basically like, hey, get your butts down in New York or over to New York or wherever you are, because these guys are going to be out of business unless they get some help. Now, Kevin's instincts were right. We had a really, really big math problem. My company is not designed, nor any IT company designed, or even an IT department in a big company designed to service 100% of the customer base simultaneously. It's just an impossibility. No company can do that. But what Kevin did is he lit that first fire, right, to summon the Riders of Rohan. If you're a Tolkien fan, you know what I mean. But essentially, in the movie, is a very pivotal moment when it looks like the forces of evil are going to conquer the forces of good, but then a cadre of horse riders show up to sort of turn the tide of the battle, and it's a pivotal moment in the story. But this felt like the Riders of Rohan showing up for us. Kevin from Massachusetts showed up with one of his best technicians. I had my friend Paul from Santa Barbara, California, fly in with two of his guys, and a buddy of mine, Josh, out of Sterling, Kansas, which is, God bless him in Sterling, Kansas, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Showed up with three technicians. I had three business leaders and six engineers to help augment my team of about 30 at that time, to help us with our recovery efforts. And more and more and more would show up along the way. But before I get to that, I want to talk about some of the encounters in hell. Now, this is a little bit of a technical slide. There's a little bit of a technical joke right there with the kill all demons, but you can ignore that if you're non-technical. What I did here, and I'm going to go quick, is I listed out, as I was thinking about this later on, and it certainly isn't a complete list, but I thought about all of the different things on our road through hell that we could have encountered, as well as the things that we did encounter. And I did this somewhere around August of 2021 when I was reflecting on what what could have been the the impact. If I could just advance this really quick. Oop, I lost. Oh, there it is, right? So these are the actual demons that we encountered. I think I saw very briefly somebody popped a question in about what zero day was used. So we were using a product called Kaseya VSA. It's a technical product that IT people use to manage the systems for all the end users that they support. It allows us to do things like remote control and patching and monitoring and a lot of cool stuff, but in the wrong hands could be used as a, dare I say, a weapon of mass destruction. So we had a tool set compromise, and the scale of the attack was also 100% widespread, right? We had 2,500 endpoints, of which endpoints being a computer, of which 250 of them were servers, fully encrypted, right? Oh joy. The timing of the attack happening on July 4th. We did not have an incident response plan, IRP. Were we lacking insurance? Well, it turns out that you don't know what's in your insurance policy until you need to activate it. Anyone who's ever been in an auto accident or needs to file like a serious health insurance claim suddenly becomes very intimate with the things that are not and the things that are covered by insurance, right? You start to discover and learn all the nuance of language and things that you didn't really bother to pay too much attention to when you signed off on that policy. And listen, I'm guilty. You know, we all do that. I think unless you're in that business, you really don't understand the magnitude of what certain terms mean. Lawsuits, thankfully, we had one, and we were able to get that down almost to zero. But revenue loss, I mean, between all costs and loss of annual recurring revenue, I'm looking at a seven-figure loss. It's massive for a business that is in only doing seven figures a year, right? We had what I would consider to be reputational loss. Like, how could I let this happen to my customers, even though we did nothing wrong and there was nothing that we could have done to prevent this from happening. And the emotional and psychological stress, not just on me, but our entire team, our families. I mean, I have stories about this that'll really bring you to tears that I just simply don't have the time for. It really puts you in a bad position. I have a friend of mine that I made because of this event, because he went through the same thing, a competitor of mine, let's say, in a different part of the country. And he confided in me. He said, Robert, I had to call my wife and tell her to hide the guns in the house because he just felt so distressed by this, not knowing what to do or how to recover, thinking that all the hard years that he put into his business were now just ripped away from him. You don't know what that feels like until you're actually a victim in an incident like that. I'm going to move quickly here simply because the amount of time we have is not long. But you know, we had a lot of angels and saints in that road to hell, and I'm just going to go briefly here. When I do this at industry events, it makes more sense. But these were some of the companies on the left that came to our aid that helped us with disaster recovery, with getting new tools spun up, with forensic analysis, with lending us people that actually flew to New York to come here and help us. And I just put up some of the major logos of the companies that stepped up in a big way, and plus the 27 subcontractors that we use. And the reason I mentioned peer groups earlier is because for me, and this is what I've been saying in our industry, there's a missing element to the cybersecurity strategy, and especially in small businesses, right? Enterprises, I think, may be a little different because they have different levels of resource and they get different levels of attention from government and law enforcement than we on Main Street are not afforded. And that is the missing element is community, right? And so it's been my mission in my community. And I'm happy to talk about that offline if anybody's really interested in ways in which you can bring the community together to act as one of the insulating barriers against a cyber attack, or I should say during recovery efforts, right? Because this isn't preventative, it's more reactionary. So I like to put up this slide to talk about. I'm going to diverge really quickly. This is a kid who lives up the block from me, where I live, and he's only a couple years older than my oldest daughter, and he's been trying to date her. And that's a complete lie. No, he's not. He does not live up the block from me, and he's not been trying to date my daughter. That is Yaroslav Vasinski, and I know Lisa knows who he is because she put his picture, same picture, I think, in her slide deck once. Yaroslav Vasinski is sitting in a Dallas jail cell awaiting 115 years. He pleaded guilty to, I believe, 9 out of 11 counts that were brought against him. He is a Ukrainian national who crossed the Polish border foolishly at the end of 2021, was apprehended by Interpol and the FBI and extradited to the United States. Long, long story there, but he is facing that jail time for this particular incident. He is one of several individuals that acted as an affiliate group to carrying out that cyber attack, not only on my company, but approximately 50-ish other companies using the Kaseya VSA product at the time, and the thousands of companies that all 50 plus of us support. And the estimate is over 1 million computers were affected in the attack that day. And this is Yevgeny Igorovich Polyanin, who lives in South Central Russia, who is under the watchful eye of law enforcement, and he was one of the co-conspirators. So the ransom note, there it is, right on. That's the actual ransom note. I redacted all of the IP addresses and all the other things that I shouldn't publish. But what did they demand? They demanded in Bitcoin $70 million from Kaseya for a universal decryption key that day. And each customer, I could have paid them $6 million to get a decryption key just for my customers, or $45,000 per file type. My answer was go pound sand. I had the ability to recover, and you're a terrorist, and you're not getting a nickel out of me. Because I was fairly confident that weekend, I was very confident that weekend that we were going to be able to recover. My only problem was the scale of the magnitude of our recovery efforts, which, by the way, took us 17 calendar days to fully recover. And I say calendar days, we were working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, including July 4th and 5th, that entire weekend. I kind of mentioned this, that the Department of Justice did apprehend one of the criminals in this event. He was 22 at the time. I think he's 24, 25 now. I was actually in the Dallas courtroom on January 18th to read a victim impact statement and stood about 10 feet away from that individual. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, I'm happy to say, and was shackled at both the hands and feet. And good for him that he had 2 U.S. Marshals protecting him. So I'll leave that one right there. But I had my opportunity in court in front of the federal judge, my attacker, the defense, the prosecution, and many FBI agents who attended that day. And I had some personal friends and family there as well. And so, here's the justice part. I'm going to kind of go through this quickly. These are actual snippets of letters that I've received, both hard copy and via email, of what sentencing is like. And it's been pushed and pushed and pushed. Sentencing, unfortunately, was pushed yet again. It's now, I believe, May 1st, which I plan on arriving in the Dallas courtroom on that day just to listen to the sentence. I feel that it will provide me and my customers and our employees and our families here maybe a little bit of closure to hear actual sentencing. So the body count, I gave you some of these numbers: 80 clients, 200 sites, 4 time zones, 2,500 endpoints. We were one of about 60 Kaseya VSA customers attacked that day. Co-op is a Swedish supermarket. So for those of you who travel Europe a bit, you may see that name, Co-op. It's a big supermarket chain all across Europe. They had to close 500 stores for 5 days. Why? Because all of their cash registers ran Windows, and they were all supported by an MSP like us, who installed Kaseya VSA to help monitor and protect those machines. But we know what happened there. Schools districts in New Zealand, right? Maryland government, even Texas governments were affected by this. The claim is over 1 million systems were affected. again, because I want to be respectful of time, I'm going to go quick on some of these things, but a lot of business lessons that we learned. Number one, communication is key, right? Not all communication is good. We had to really work with our attorneys assigned through us from insurance, because the first statements they wanted us to put out were very, and nothing against attorneys. I love attorneys. If you're out there, I love you. You provide an invaluable service, just like we do. But we really had to soften up that language. So it was very counseled, very important legal information that I received, but I needed it to be considerate, right? I needed to speak to relationships and not make it seem like I was hiding behind a lawyer. We learned that we needed to be consistent. Clients wanted to know that we were still alive, even though we had no news to offer, right? That we were putting out a regular cadence and that our communications were clear and concise, especially during a tough time like this. Your audiences, right? You're going to need to communicate with your clients, your internal people, your vendors, insurance, legal, and law, right? And no, don't forget your family and friends. There are a lot of ways to communicate: phone, email, text messages, but don't forget that last little icon there about rolling out, actually physically visiting people, shake their hand and let them know that you're still, still alive and still working on their problem. If you should ever suffer a cyber incident, please, for the love of God, do not say the word breach. It has legal implications. Instead, you can use words like incident or attack, or as a friend of mine who is a chief information security officer for a large technology company told me, he says, we don't even say that. We say it's an investigation, right? Until he deems it otherwise. The roles in your company are going to change, right? We call the event boom, right? For anybody in military or a military experience, you may understand that term. Left of boom, right? Pre-event, you have a high-functioning company that has well-defined accountabilities for the entire team, right? We do. We feel like we do. But right of boom, after the event, your roles and responsibilities are going to change rapidly and quickly, and people need to be able to be willing to do different jobs. I had account managers that I turned into Uber drivers because I had technicians coming in from all across the country that didn't know the landscape here, right? I had people who were doing food runs or picking up supplies at local computer shops because we just needed things to be able to help with our recovery. So different people started undertaking different roles. And your processes and tools will be different. If you should ever suffer an event, think about all the systems that you depend upon. Just even a customer list, where is that information? Is it now encrypted, or do you have an alternate place where you can get it that is safe, even a printout, right? We scoured through our email to be able to find and piece together contact lists because our main CRM and ticketing system was fully encrypted, right? And I have a picture on the wall there, on the screen here, of Post-it notes, right? My ops director, Jay, had this brilliant idea of, and I kind of have this vision of like old World War II movies where you see wooden pieces on a board and generals moving them around with a stick. Well, we use Post-it note. We're a tech company, and we use Post-it notes on a big blank wall to put. The green ones were the day of week, the orange, I'm sorry, the hot pink ones were the clients, and the orange ones were technicians. And with phones in our ear and people coming in and out of that room, we were dynamically changing, scheduling around like this. Like we couldn't use a ticketing system and a electronic calendaring system as quickly or as efficiently as we could an analog paper system like this, believe it or not. So, your behaviors are going to change, your tools are going to change, and even your strategy is going to change. No, we did not file for bankruptcy. I know it says Chapter 13. I didn't mean it that way. I get a question asked all the time, is it over yet? And no, the answer is not quite, because as I've mentioned, we're still looking and seeking for justice. We're still seeking restitution for the damages that were caused to us, and we're still wrangling with some cyber liability insurance issues that we're still continuing to move through. So it's been almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years on July 2nd of 2024, and here I am still going through this, albeit not at the frantic and emotional pace that we did in those first couple of weeks. Now, I do want to mention one of the community things that I've done. I had an epiphany in August of 2021, realizing the great fortune that I had being so interconnected in my industry to receive such massive and unsolicited help. People just showed up at our doorstep to help. Even local competitors who said, "Hey, I know what happened. Like, how can I help?" And it dawned on me, as I mentioned earlier, that community is a very, very important part of a small business's ability to recover from a disaster, even if it can even be a non-technical disaster, right? So long story short, I registered the domain msp911.org with the intention that companies like me would have a place to go to in the event that they needed to hit the giant red emergency button or break glass in case of emergency. I have since donated it to an organization called CompTIA. Many of you may know that name, and we've rebranded it as the Emergency Response Team. If you go to that website, you'll see my name as the chair of that event, and we've been able to rally some very important industry heavyweights to help with this cause. Now, what is it? It's an all volunteer. There's no cost for it. If you're an MSP, right? If you're an MSP and you have a security incident that's affecting your customers, you can simply just fill out a form and we'll get an electronic notification. Actually, my cell phone will ring. And one of us will call you back there for coaching and counseling and mentorship and just to say, hey, brother, hey, sister, I've been there. I know what you're going through. In fact, there's a woman who runs an MSP out of Toronto, Canada, had an awful event happen to her. Even though she contacted us well after the event, I'm kind of just being there for her, for a shoulder to cry on, and just to give her some different advice about what we went through, just sharing stories. It's very helpful. I know this sounds crazy from a techno geek like me, but there's an emotional and psychological and deeply personal impact that happens to just about any business during a cyber event. And these are the things that we don't talk about, right? Big companies have massive resources. Nobody's losing their job. And even if they did, they're probably highly marketable. But when it's your baby, when it's your business, when it's your blood, sweat, and tears, when it's your family's well-being on the line, it affects you in immensely different ways. So I know I went very, very quickly, and I hope I provided some value to all of you. I'd like to open it up for some Q&A, but I want to leave you with some final or some other thoughts. One of them is, I get asked this question, Robert, why are you so vocal about this? I've been on stage in front of over 1,000 people talking about this because I believe that there is no shame in victimhood. And that's a problem that we have, I think, in this country, that we're not talking about these events openly. And I believe that there is strength in being vulnerable. There's in that vulnerability. And then the third thing is that, community is a missing component. How do we best prepare through community by learning from each other? How do we best recover by reaching out to community and getting the help you need in your time of crisis, even if it's a small, it's not at the scale that we suffered. These are important things for us to be able to help each other with. And it's my way of combating cyber criminals that are behind enemy lines and that I don't have the resources, the smarts, the money, the talent to be able to fight my adversaries. But what I can do is I can incite communities or invite communities to come together and link arms during our moments of crisis to be able to respond better. And so there's my contact information. I'm delighted to be able to connect on LinkedIn. All I ask is that if you do send me an invite, please mention this presentation. I get so many invites. I just kind of want to know how we're connecting and be delighted to carry on the conversation there. So Max, I think there might be some questions. If you want to kind of just jump back in, I'm happy to help um, continue the conversation with you.
Yeah. So that was quite the ride. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate your willingness to share this experience. If anyone has last minute questions, please do put them in the Q&A function. We'll try to get to them. But given the timing, I'll just give you, Robert, a few topics here from the Q&A,
Sure.
and maybe you can dive into whichever one makes the most sense. So
Yep.
there was a question comment about the importance of patching.
Yes.
There was some questions about the vector used and was it a phishing phishing email, and then
Nope.
there was a question around what you learned that you would do differently next
Yeah,
time.
so I'll try to unpack that quickly. So we used the system called Kaseya VSA, which is known categorically as an RMM, a remote management and monitoring tool. Lots of IT departments and lots of companies like us, practically all of us, use something like this. If it's not Kaseya VSA, it's a competitor. Essentially, what the attackers did is they found a security hole, a zero-day exploit, a security flaw not known to anybody but very, very few people, including them. And they used that to break into the system. They bypassed administrative logons. They bypassed multi-factor authentication to gain unlawful entry. And once inside that system, because they had essentially the power of God in their hands, they were able to upload ransomware and then deploy that out to all of the computers that we managed. So they used our own tools against us. Right. And they used that to send out so there was nobody clicked on anything, right? Nobody, nobody, there was no humans involved. This was completely an attacker finding a security hole and just waltzing right through it. Um, and, so there's a lot of speculation, should we continue to use RMM products? Well, it's almost like saying, hey, mechanic, you can work on my car. You just can't use any tools in your toolbox. It's kind of hard to twist lug nuts off with your hands, right? Um, and what did we learn? I kind of covered some of the things in towards the latter part of the presentation that having a good cyber policy in place is a must. You've got to be able to, you have to know in a time of crisis that communication is either your friend or your enemy, and you have to do that well. And mind those 5 C's that I covered. You already, you need to understand or role play out what an incident potentially could look like for you, right? So having an incident response plan and having somebody facilitate walking through that plan periodically, whatever that means. A larger company, maybe quarterly. A smaller company, maybe annually. And maybe you don't have to go too nuts, but you should have at least something. You should think about like what would happen if ransomware were installed everywhere, or what should happen if all my data was exfiltrated or all of our funds were stolen. What would you do in those scenarios? Do you know? Do you know who to call? Do you know what to do? Do you know who to call first? Those are different scenarios that I would recommend that you try to play out. So um, uh, I hope I got to those questions.
Yep.
I do
And
I do see one about reporting. Yeah, I would
yeah.
go to the you'd want to file, sorry, an IC3 report, which is on the FBI.gov website. We did almost immediately. I got something right. And that was very instrumental in getting some contact and I'll just say assistance through the FBI. Kind of hard to unpack that in the few minutes that we have remaining. But if you've ever lost funds, for instance, right? If you've ever had money illegally, fraudulent wire transfer, contact the FBI right away because they have something called the RAT team, a Rapid Asset Recovery Team, or so I forget what it's exactly called. But there's a good chance if you file that report quickly, they can pull that money back. Max, you got any other questions?
No, just a lot of comments thanking you for vulnerability and sharing your story. A lot of people asking if they can share the presentation. Yes, we will send it out tomorrow. That is totally fine with us. And we can include Robert's contact info in that follow-up email as well.
Yep.
I know it was just on the screen.
Happy to continue the conversation online. Listen, everybody needs to understand something. Sometimes people look at me a little funny. I'm not selling anything. I'm really not. I mean, this is my therapy for fighting cybercrime, and it's my way of doing what it's, and especially as a victim, to take my power back, to be able to help others in whatever means that means. To be able to bring communities together and educate about what happened to us.
Great. And there was one last question that just came in. I don't know if you have another
Sure.
minute to stick
Yeah,
around, but
absolutely.
around the legal implications or claims for downtime. Do your customers have a claim against your
Oof.
company
Yeah.
or against Kaseya?
Yeah, so you got another hour? We can talk about that one. Um, Geez, there's a lot. I'm going to be succinct here. So yes, all of the above. There's a lot of damages that happen in an event like this, and whether you have just an event that happens to you or you're part of a larger blast radius, like what happened to us, very sensational what happened to us. Most incidents are not going to be as sensational. But that's why cyber liability insurance, and again, I can't make money on a policy even if I wanted to, right? I'm not licensed to sell you cyber, but you really should have that policy in place to protect you. And if you're in the technology business like we are highly encouraging all of our customers to have it. We're going to get to a day in our industry where it's going to be required for you to have it in order to be a client. Because the liability is just far too great should something bad like this happen. So you got to protect yourself, right? You have a car, you have auto insurance. You have a family, you have a good health policy for everybody, right? You have a business, you probably have a buy-sell agreement with life insurance, disability policy. You have all this other insurance. Why aren't you protecting your business?
I think we'll conclude things there. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Robert.
All right, it's my pleasure. I hope all of you got some value out of this. And like I said, I'm not selling anything. Happy to have conversations offline if you so desire.
Great. And just from the NCA perspective, I just wanted to circle back quickly to the program that Lisa mentioned at the beginning. Program is called Cyber Secure My Business. So Robert just outlined the harrowing experience he had facing a cyber attack, threatening your business, your livelihood, and the importance of preparedness and having a peer community to lean on. The Cyber Secure My Business program is aimed at the owners and operators of small and medium-sized businesses, and we're using business language to teach them how to manage cyber risk without knowing how to do the technical aspects of cybersecurity. As Lisa mentioned, it takes the form of a 6-week live instruction course with practical assignments that empower the participants to be able to speak to their IT team, their vendors, and their customers about cybersecurity from a place of knowledge. And it also includes access to a peer sharing forum for other companies that are with other companies that are taking the course. So the link to the program page is still in the chat. I'll put my email there if you have any other questions about the program. We would love to bring on more partners, bring on people to take the course. Everyone is connected in the digital economy, so we want to protect small businesses, big businesses, everyone who's doing business online. So yeah, once again, thank you to Robert. Thank you to all our attendees for joining. And we will be following up tomorrow with the recording. Once again, feel free to share that. Feel free to reach out to us or Robert. That info email. Hope you all enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day.
Stay safe out there. Take care.